What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast. This is episode 64, as we are going to be recapping the series where the Mets absolutely destroy the Colorado Rockies, taking advantage of a poor team, getting some separation in the standings. There's a series coming up against the Nationals that we will be previewing, so we got a lot to get into on this episode. Before we jump in everything, I ask that you please leave a like on your way into the show, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans. You don't want to miss out on any of the content. We're going to have additional content coming your way for the trade deadline and all that other stuff because there are already rumors floating around in that regard. And only in about 2 months away until then. So there's a lot to get into with that. But yeah, so be sure to subscribe for that. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on Met Central. If you're watching in the live chat, we promise that we will get to your comments throughout the episode. We just have a lot to get into, so we are going to be, having our discussions, and we'll pull up comments as we are going. But yeah, nice to see the Mets finally do something that we've been asking from them after a little bit of a rough start in game one. Game one definitely did not make me feel good about the way this series might go, but thankfully they took advantage, scored a lot of runs against a piss poor team, and now all we can do is hope that they carry the momentum going into this homestand here. A nice, good homestand that this team needs. But how are we feeling after the sweep here?
It was a good weekend. It was a very good weekend overall. Obviously, they did what they had to do. They played a poor Colorado Rockies team in Coors Field, which we all know is a very hitter friendly ballpark. And like you said, first game wasn't pretty in the most part because that was just an ugly baseball game all around. And thankfully, Francisco Lindor, the captain, had to come off the bench late in that game and delivered the big 2-run RBI to propel the Mets to win that game. But then the second and third game, they did what they had to do. They went out there against poor pitchers, Herman Marquez in the first game, and then Chase Dolander in the finale yesterday, and they crushed them. They destroyed them, and they put up 8 runs in the second game, and then put up 13 runs yesterday. So, and you got some very good performances from the top players in this lineup. Obviously, you had Juan Soto, who got on base 6 times yesterday, 3 courtesy of just singles, and then 3 times via the walk, which that was the first time in his major league career that he got on base 6 times in one game. So that was nice to see. Pete Alonso obviously had a monster series, and he passed David Wright for second on the all-time list for Mets home runs as he looks to chase down Darryl Strawberry. So congratulations to Pete on that one. Nimmo had a decent series. Lindor, like I said, he was solid overall. Jeff McNeil had 2 very good games in Game 2 and Game 3. And overall, you got solid pitching from both Senga, Holmes. McGill was a little bit shaky, but that's just typical Tyler McGill, pretty much what we see from him every single start. And yeah, overall, it was a successful road trip. They go 5-2, split with the Dodgers, sweep the Rockies. Would have been nice to maybe go 6-1. Obviously, maybe you get back one of those games in the Dodgers series, but it is what it is. You will always take a 5-2 road trip at any time you have it. And now, you're facing the Nationals at home for a 3-game set. And then not only did the Mets take care of business, but you also got help in other parts in the division. Obviously, the Pirates swept the Phillies, so the Mets now currently have a 4.5 game lead over the Phillies in the NL East. And then the Braves just keep on losing, and they've just had a terrible stretch these last couple weeks, and they've been falling. They've been falling further and away from the top spot of the NL East. So overall, it's a very good sign right now, and it's a very good time to be a Met fan right now.
Yeah, currently sitting at the top of the National League altogether, which is very encouraging. And they could have a little more separation if they did take one more of those games against the Dodgers. But the biggest thing that annoyed me in that first game is that it did not feel like they were getting contributions from the bottom part of the order, and the depth was just not helping out. But that ended up changing throughout the series, which was the most encouraging sign. But again, I'm not going to sit here and be ready to throw a parade and go on the streets naked or anything until they prove that this is sustainable, because that's really the biggest thing. Now that you did what you did against the Rockies, it's about how you build on it going forward, because I don't care that Juan Soto had the best series that he's had of the season if he does not build on this. If we look back at this as the point of, okay, this road trip is really where Juan Soto gets going as a Met, then great, which I feel like it's going to be that. I want to make that clear. But it does not matter if we look back if he does struggle after, and then we look back at it like, okay, it was just a little bit of a hot stretch. Same goes for guys like Brandon Nimmo who hit well. Pete Alonso, this entire road trip was unbelievable. I mean, he had what, 5 home runs maybe this entire road trip, something along those lines. And then Jeff McNeil even, contributing a good amount. Getting the contributions from Ronnie Mauricio in the last few games was very encouraging to see. So with all that said, again, it is great, but now you have to build on it. And I hate to, already flip the page, but that's where we need to go. But we will talk about everything that did happen throughout the series because there is a lot to get into. I don't know why this went out of order, but is there anything else you wanted to add before we get into the rundown of the series?
No, listen, I agree with that statement. I think it's very nice to see that this offense, obliterated the Rockies pitching staff, which they should be doing, especially in that ballpark with the with the elevation and less air resistance in the air. And they were pretty good, especially in the last game yesterday. They went 5 for 13 with runners in scoring position. I think that was because I did the math yesterday. I think that was a 364 batting average with runners in scoring position, which is something that we want to see, especially against the better teams. Because if this team actually did that consistently, the record, and I know the record is good right now. There are 18 games over 500, but it would be currently a lot better. But hopefully, like you said, that needs to ultimately build up. And because I see a bunch of people, really getting excited over the offense, and I kind of have the same statement where we've seen this offense before in the past, especially under the Chavez Barnes regime as hitting coaches, where they have these these little spurts of 1 to 2, 3 games where they're absolutely going off, they're hitting home runs, they're being productive with runs in score position, but then there's a natural drop off. And it's nice that they did against the Rockies, but if that doesn't carry over against the better teams, and I really want to see this now carry over against this Washington Nationals team where they have a little bit better of a pitching staff. Obviously, they're going to face Mackenzie Gore tomorrow in the first game of that series. So that this now needs to carry over to the better teams in order for me to say, okay, now I can see this being a bit more sustainable.
Yeah, I 100% agree there. And just to get to some comments before we get into the rundown, honestly, I'm not confident they were supposed to do this against the Rockies. I want to see them do it against good teams. Exactly, Jake. Like, I think both things could be true. I think you could be happy that they did what they were supposed to because, we'd be very pissed off if they did not sweep the Rockies. So it's easy to overlook it and be like, yeah, well, this was what was supposed to happen. So I'm happy about that. But again, you're right that it does not mean anything if they don't, pick this up or keep this going against better teams. And Brian, I'll address this
Mhm.
comment later on. I starred this one to address a little bit later on because that's going to be a bigger conversation here because you guys know that we have to have at least once an episode of conversation about the hitting and the hitting coaches. Although last episode it wasn't brought up at least as much. But either way, let's get into the series rundown here. So in game number one, it was Kodai Senga versus uh Rolizon, and that ended up being a switch there because I believe that it was supposed to be Senzatella, but they went with an opener. Either way, weird that they went with that. But the bottom of the third inning, Mickey Moniak hits a solo shot to make it 1-0 for the Rockies. Ritter hits a triple. Alonso with a great play, though, to throw him out at the plate off of a Moniak grounder. And the Mets get out of that inning without any further damage being allowed there. And the Mets, honestly, this entire game did what we've been accustomed to because in the sixth inning, Alonso and McNeil walk back to back. Taylor gets hit by a pitch. You have the bases loaded with nobody out, and Beatty, Alvarez, and Mauricio all strike out in embarrassing fashion. And it felt like it was going to be a game where the Mets are just going to lose because the offense does not show up against this pitching staff of all teams. But thankfully, in the top of the seventh, Marte and Soto hit singles, and Alonso has other plans with the offense as he hits a double to make it 2-1. Brazaban comes in, Hilliard hits a triple, Moniak with a single ties the game back up at 2. Brazaban has not looked as sharp lately, which we'll talk more about that later. It's definitely a fatigue thing, but again, more to talk about that later on. Bottom of the eighth inning, Beck and Estrada with back-to-back hits. Goodman walks a great double play turn by Brett Beatty there. Or I should say turn, but he snagged the liner and then tied the runner out over at third base. Stanek, though, gets out of it with a strikeout. And then in the ninth inning, Soto with a single, Alonso with a walk, and the captain comes in the pinch hit, gets a double to make it 4-2 on the broken toe and everything. once again, leading by example out there, showing why us Met fans want him to be named captain. Diaz would shut things down in the ninth inning. We go to game number two, where it was eventful, but also not too eventful at the same time. Clay Holmes versus Ramon Marquez in that game. In the top of the third inning, Mauricio would get a leadoff home run after almost hitting one in the game prior, as it was a deep fly ball that died just at the wall, 400 something feet. But this one he gets all of, and I believe it was 456 feet, just absolutely crushing this one to lead that inning off for the Mets. In the bottom of the fourth inning, McMahon ties it, though, with a solo shot of his own. In the fifth inning, Jared Young with a solo shot, which made it 2-1. Mauricio with a single. Nimmo with a single, which made it 3-1. So good to see Ronnie Mauricio contributing a lot for this lineup and the Mets getting on the board there. And also Clay Holmes, shout out to him. It's not noted here, but he worked in the gyms and worked out of them quite a bit. In the sixth inning, McNeil with a solo shot, which made it 4-1. In the seventh inning, Nimmo and Soto walk. Alonso with a single. Taylor with a sacrifice fly, which made it 5-1. And then Luis Torrens makes it 7-1. And then the eighth inning, Lindor single, Nimmo double, and the Mets would go up 8-1, and that would end up being the final score of that ball game. And then in game number three, Tyler McGill versus Chase Dollander. In the second inning, the Mets taking advantage of the young pitcher as McNeil hits a solo shot to make it 1-0. Mauricio with a single, Taylor walks, and then Alvarez with a single makes it 2-0. In the third inning, Soto with a single, Alonso hits a home run to make it 4-0. Mauricio with a single again, steals a bag, and Taylor with a double to bring him in, and that made it 5-0. In the fourth inning, the top of the fourth, Soto and Alonso with some singles there, and then McNeil with a home run to make it 8-0. In the bottom of the fifth, Hilliard breaks the no-hit bid with a double. Fulford with a single, which made it 8-1. Freeman walks, and then Beck doubles to make it 8-2. But Tyler McGill thankfully able to get through that inning, which ridiculous that it even got that way, but the Tyler McGill experience, everyone. That's just what it is. But in the seventh inning, McNeil with a double. Beatty hits a home run to make it 10-2. Nice to see him get a little bit going with the bat because he's kind of cooled off as of lately. In the bottom of the seventh, Freeman doubles, Goodman singles to make it 10-3. In the top of the eighth, Soto walks, Alonso with a home run again to make it 12-3. Another 2 home run game, his second of the road trip. And again, 5 or 6 home runs this entire road trip, which was just really good to see from Pete Alonso. In the ninth inning, Alvarez with a solo shot. I'm sure Eric Chavez was not happy to see that, but he ends up expanding the Mets lead. And unfortunately, Blackburn got into a little bit of trouble in the ninth inning, but he wouldn't allow too much to where he had to get pulled, thankfully, as the Mets end up winning it 13-5. Thank goodness they did not have to go to anyone else in the bullpen. Shout out to Blackburn, though, for coming in, eating the rest of that ball game in game number 3, saving this heavily taxed pen. A lot of positives in that regard. The Mets didn't have to use a guy like Reed Garrett throughout this entire series, which was a huge positive to me. Brosbon got some rest. Now he's going to be getting 3 days off because of the off day today. So a lot of good in that regard. Diaz, too, getting rest. So on that front, a lot of positives. And then in terms of the offense, you got some production from all around the lineup, which was very good to see. But again, you got to build on that. But I'll let you jump in, Matt, and give more of your overall thoughts with the series.
I mean, yeah, just going back to the first game, obviously that game out of this whole series was definitely the most frustrating part because I mean, you talked about it and you brought it up through this recap that the Mets had multiple opportunities in this game to really break through offensively and they just couldn't. I mean, they had first and second in the first inning, they had first and second in the second inning, and they couldn't break through. And then really because credit to Kodai Senga, who really pitched a great game. And especially considering, it's hard to pitch that long course field, especially when your offense is just not contributing behind you at all. And the fact that he kept going out there inning after inning after inning and just kept shutting down that Rockies lineup to keep the Mets in that game, it was a very good sign from Kodai Senga. And I mean, he's just been incredible all year. And I mean, you just look at the baseline numbers, the ERA. I mean, he's pretty much consistently pitching deep into every single game. He's pretty much giving you 6 innings every time. I mean, he's looking good right now. He definitely deserves a shout for the All-Star game this year. And He's putting himself in the NL Cy Young conversation. So it's very nice to see from Senga. And I mean, yeah. And then like you talk about when you get to that sixth inning and when you load up the bases via, a back-to-back walks from Pete and McNeil and then Tyrone Taylor being hit by pitch, and it's like you look at it, right? And we've criticized this team a whole bunch of times this year because of their, not being clutch enough when runners are in scoring position. And the fact that, all you need in that situation is a sacrifice fly, which in course field, it should be pretty easy to do. Just hit a ball deep into the outfield. And the fact that you go down on three straight strikeouts from Beatty, Alvarez with an uncompetitive at bat, and then Ronnie Mauricio, which I do want to touch a bit on because he didn't look good in that at bat at all. I mean, he gets fed two straight curveballs, and then the third pitch was a curveball as well, just low out of the zone, and he was just basically flailing on it. And at that point, because when you looked at Mauricio, since he came up at that point, he went 0-8 for his first couple of at bats, and really when you looked at each at bat, they weren't really competitive. He was swinging and missing a lot. He was chasing a lot. He just really didn't look comfortable, and I was like, okay, maybe the Mets may, and I know this wasn't, the Mets' fault per se because Vientos did get hurt, so they had to call somebody up. But maybe Mauricio was just rushed a little bit way too much, and maybe he could have benefited a bit more from a couple more at bats down in AAA with Syracuse. But ever since then, he hit that long double in the first game, which I mean, it's a shock to me how that was the only ballpark that ball wouldn't get out because in 29 of the ballparks that would be a home run, and then Coors Field you're like how. But ever since that long double he hit in the first game, he's pretty much exploded because obviously he hits the home run in the second game. His last at bat in the second game, he hits a deep fly ball into right field, which he crushed too, and he flew out. But it was a very good at bat from him. And then in the third game, got a couple base hits, stole a couple bases as well. So Mauricio has looked a lot better since he got that big time double in the first game, and then obviously courtesy to Pete, he ended up coming through clutch in that in the first game. Putting the Mets up 2-1. Obviously, Brazaban gives the run right back. But then, as I talked about, and you brought up, Lindor just comes up from the bench with the broken toe, and he comes through with that big time two RBI two RBI double to put the Mets up 4-2, and Diaz was able to come in the ninth inning and then close out that game, and then like they talked about with the second and third game, the offense they did what they had to do. Obviously, it was a little bit shaky in the start of the second game because they didn't look completely comfortable, especially facing Herman Marquez. But eventually, they got to the third inning. Mauricio hits that home run, and pretty much they got comfortable from there. And you had the home run from McNeil as well. Got a couple of other big time base hits as well. And then the pitching for the most part was comfortable, like I said. So overall, it was very solid performance.
Yeah, and I just want to, touch on two things. One, when you brought up the All Star game, I just want to remind everyone in the chat, please. I am begging every single one of you, every single day. You get 5 votes. Please, can we make sure we got Lindor into the All Star game this year? Because I am so tired of him not being in the All Star game for this team, and he's showing again in this series why he should be. So go out and vote. If you want to bias vote for any other Mets, go ahead and do that. But the guy that I'm really going to push for is Lindor. I've been doing it every single day myself. There is no reason why you guys shouldn't as well. Do it right at midnight. Do it, while you're brushing your teeth, whatever. Takes 2 minutes. Go do it. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on was, again, that inning where the Mets did have the base load with no outs. I was saying in my post game, too, get a ball in play. Challenge the Rockies to make a defensive play, which they struggled to do all series long. I believe that they had an error in every single game this series. No, they didn't in game number one, but at the very least, challenge that defense to make some sort of play. Just put the ball in play and I'm happy. But unfortunately, that did not end up happening. But again, thankfully, they ended up coming through in the later games. I didn't love looking at 3 for 14 with runners at scoring position in game two. At least in game three, 5 for 13, so a little bit better. But again, it really just goes back to the point where none of this matters if they don't build on it. But it was good to see Juan Soto have 2 3-hit games in this series, and even in the game where he didn't get a hit, still getting on base through the walk. So a lot of encouragement in terms of that regard.
No, Soto has he's looked a lot comfortable at the plate, and this was something I touched upon. I think Yeah, it was in yesterday's post game, but the thing with Juan Soto, and obviously it's disclaimer, like of course, like I'm not gonna hype up this Rocky series like too much, because again he should be doing this against this Rockies team and it has to carry over against the better teams. But the one thing I really noticed about Soto, and it's really something when you look at his whole career throughout all the teams he's played for so far, because obviously, like, we're big proponents on the offensive side, of this offense, to pull the ball, because that's where you're gonna get the most power from, and that's where you're gonna do the most damage. But I think with Soto, like Soto is such a good hitter that when he's on, he's really spraying the ball all over the field. And really, when Juan Soto is the most comfortable, and we've seen it a couple times with his home runs, but when Soto is the most comfortable, he's really getting a lot of his base hits through that left center field gap. A lot of his home runs go over there. A lot of his extra base hits go over there. So, and I think because we've seen it a couple times now, especially when he gets into those rough patches where he keeps rolling over. I think that's him trying to just pull the ball way too much, because like I said, when he's his most comfortable, he's spraying the ball all over the field. And for me with Soto, I don't need him to pull the ball constantly, because like I said, we know he's such a good hitter. We know that he could spray the ball all over the field. So I think Soto just has to keep doing what he's doing, because his swing looks a lot more level. He's not really pulling off way too much. He's not getting that front shoulder, out in front way too much. So I think, like I said, he's looking a lot more comfortable at the plate. Obviously, it's great to see that he's still drawing walks, but the fact now that he's starting to hit the ball a lot more harder and a lot more in the air now, that's a great sign. And I think, like I said, for Soto, just keep on doing what you're doing. Don't over rely way too much on pulling the ball, because, like I said, I know that when he's on, he can spray the ball all over the field.
Yeah, 100%. And just seeing him look comfortable too, visibly. Although, again, I said it with the bottle flip, the
He
way
looks
he ran
miserable.
away after. Michael K is hopefully going to get to the bottom of that one, and then the photo yesterday, in the dugout, it just, I don't know. To me, it seemed like he misses Aaron Judge. So again,
Or
hopefully Michael K, the lion that he is going to get to the bottom of that one. I
or when
guess.
yeah, or when he was guiding Pete Alonso into slide to home plate, he looked
Oh, that
pretty
one too.
miserable.
Yeah, he was guiding him to the Bronx, and he was telling him, "Go, bring your mood. You have to bring it down because you're a Met, not a Yankee." Yeah, I guess I have a Michael K tattoo as well over here. So, um, yeah, which maybe we'll get into that throughout this episode too, because holy crap, his rants have been absolutely hilarious about the Mets and Met fans. And honestly, Michael K, I don't know if you realize this, and clearly you're listening because you're listening to a lot of Met shows, but um all I could say is you're not helping yourself by doing these rants, because all it's going to do is make Met fans troll you more. Like now, every single time anything good happens with Soto, you're gonna get tagged. So I would say you're probably not listening to this, but again, you actually might be listening to this. So go ahead and keep on ranting and let the fleas bother you. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, because it's just I can't stop laughing every time I hear him go on these rants, because it's been like two or three times now, and I would not be surprised if he does it again today.
I mean, I personally couldn't care less. I mean, listen, I like Michael K as a guy and as a radio host, but that's just that rant that he had was just no. Come on, man. Well, why are you letting just regular Met fans get just annoyed? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, come on. You know you're better than that. Come on. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Um. So I again, like that's I could go on a longer tangent about that one, because it's honestly just hilarious that someone that's like bragging about his accolades and everything is just saying all this and talking down on people too, which is just really weird. But I digress. Just to get back in terms of the series and overall things there. Again, just positives in terms of the pitching staff as well to talk about. I thought Clay Holmes had another good start. I think another guy that's making a bid for the All Star game is him right now. And like I said before, the biggest thing that I was happy about is how much the bullpen got saved throughout the series because Reed Garrett, I did not want to see him have to come into a lot of games this series. He needs the rest badly. Diaz, I'm glad you didn't have to use him. Now he gets 3 off days. I mean, they're going into tomorrow's game with everyone available outside of Paul Blackburn from the bullpen now, which I'm very happy about because this bullpen desperately needed that after the extra innings versus the Dodgers and just those close games.
Yeah, and then they brought up they made a roster move today where they sent down Brandon Waddell to AAA, and then they brought up Justin Garza as well. So that, again, that's another arm that's going to be added to the pen for this series. But yeah, no,
Speaking of Waddell, quickly, just because I want to jump in, and I just remember that I was surprised to not see him in instead of Castillo in that second game.
yeah, yeah, that's a fair point. But then overall, like I said, I liked again that the bullpen got saved because I mean Senga went out there, he pitched well. Obviously, like I mentioned before, his forkball was just disgusting. I mean, he got 34 swings at 15 whiffs on that forkball alone, which is just, I mean, that's just disgusting. But then I mean, I like you mentioned with Brazoban wasn't sharp. Obviously, he gave up the home run. I mean, just a quick touch we have problem Brazoban. Like I'm not worried about Brazoban again. This is just a fatigue thing, and we've seen it with pitchers, especially last year and then this year as well. Like relief pitchers when they get overworked, and overall just again naturally with bullpen arms, they kind of do have an up and down like moments throughout the season. I mean, we just saw with Reed Garrett 2-3 weeks ago where Reed Garrett didn't look sharp at all, and then he ended up getting back on form. So I'm not too worried about Brosnan. I think if he gets a little bit more rest and the Mets kind of limit his work a little bit, I think he'll get back to the Brosnan that we've been seeing over the last couple weeks and throughout the regular season. So overall, I'm not I'm not too worried. Stanek was not great, and he got lucky that the Rockies didn't do damage at all because I mean he loaded up the bases in the eighth inning, and then he just got he got luck. He got luck. He got bailed out because Ryan McMahon hits a liner right towards Brett Beatty, and he and credit to Beatty. I mean he was able to catch that ball on the line and then was able to tag out the guy at third base. To huge double play, and then Stanek obviously strikes out the guy. I forgot who he struck out, but he struck him out to get out of that inning. So yeah, like I said, Stanek not great, was a bit fortunate, but thankfully they were able to get out of that inning. And then like you said with Diaz, just again sharp, and it was a quick 1-3 inning for him. Holmes again, I like this outing. I didn't love that he gave up 9 hits in that outing, but he did get into a couple jams, but credit to him because he worked out of it. And I know he gave up 9 hits, but to be fair, I mean 2 of those hits. Oh, I mean first of all, the second hit that he gave up, I don't think it should have been a hit at all. I think it should have been an error just because that was because he gives up the it was either a leadoff hit or it was the second batter who got a hit, and then the guy who came up after him, he hits a ground ball, which should have been a tailor-made double play, but Brett Beatty decided to go right instead of left at the ball. So for me, that should have been an error because Brett Beatty should be making that play. So, but whatever, it's a hit. And then the other hit, which I believe it was in the 5th inning, it was that pop up into center field, which McNeil just couldn't get to, and he kind of dove and he just couldn't get, which Tyrone Taylor probably makes that play, considering that that he's a natural center fielder. But it is what it is. Credit to Clay Holmes. He got into a couple of jams, but was able to work out of it. And then, like you said, with the bullpen, Budo, he goes 2 innings. And he pitched very well, so that's nice to see. And then Castillo, pitches the last inning, and he pitched very well as well. And then, like I said, with McGill, it was a typical McGill start where it's like in some innings he looks good, and then some innings he doesn't look great at all. And he's walking guys, he's giving up base hits, he's getting into jams, and it's just like it's frustrating to watch with McGill because I mean, like we've talked about, it's like he has the stuff, but it's like for some reason he's just incapable of putting it all together, especially in one singular game, because he went out in that first inning and then like in typical McGill fashion, he's throwing his fastball early. I mean, he threw 12 pitches in that first inning, 10 of them were fastballs, and then 2 of them were sliders, and he ended up striking out the side in that first inning. And then, he got into that jam in the second inning. He was able to work out of it, and then he looked comfortable in the 3rd and 4th inning. And then, the 5th inning, just giving up back-to-back walks. He ends up, I think he loaded up the bases in that inning, and thankfully he was able to get out of that jam. I think he only gave up 2 runs in that inning, so thankfully he didn't allow too much damage. But again, with McGill, it's just like it's a typical McGill start where he's not great, but he's not terrible. He's just average. And then, like you said, credit to Paul Blackburn, which I mean, Blackburn wasn't the sharpest, and he wasn't, the Blackburn that we saw against the Dodgers. He gave up a couple runs, gave up a couple, of hard contact hits, but he basically went in there to just do a job, just to eat innings, get 12 outs and save the bullpen, and he did that to great effect. And I mean, and I was even talking to my dad about this when we were watching the last game. It almost seems like it's easier to get outs in the close games than it is to get outs in these blowout games, just because you're not really into it, and the other team who's up at bat, they pretty much have nothing to lose. So it's like, and again, considering that you have an off day the next day, it's like you kind of want to get out of there. And Keith also brought that up on the broadcast as well. So I know Blackbird didn't look too sharp, but again, he did his job. Went out there, got 12 outs, saved the bullpen. So overall, I think the pitching did their job for the most part.
Yeah. By the way, what's going on, D and Ray in the chat? But yeah. Shout out to Kodai Senga, who had 22 whiffs, by the way, on 58 swings in his start. Just really good. 15 whiffs on the forkball. Just unbelievable. I mean, again, he's got to be in the All-Star game. Simple as that. Simple as that. He's got to be in the All-Star game. But the pitching, once again, just doing what they've done all year, and the fact that they didn't even have to utilize their best pitchers throughout most of the series is also very encouraging. Just to rattle off a couple of numbers as well, after the series, just because, I mean, do you have anything else that you really want to get into from the series? Because for the most part, I feel like this is kind of just like an easy series to recap. They took care of business against a bad team. Like, I don't know if there's anything else really to unpack from the series. It was relatively straightforward.
Yeah, there wasn't really a lot to unpack. I mean, really the most talking parts was from that first game, and we pretty much went over pretty much everything. Senga was good. They struggled early, and then they got the big clutch hit from Lindor and Pete later on that game. So, and then the second and third game, like I said, they just destroyed them. So, yeah, there's not really much to talk about in the series.
In terms of just some other stuff, which before we get to Brian's comment, TJ Stats put out a tweet earlier this afternoon, which he usually does this, where it puts out just a couple different stats, and one really popped out, or a few popped out, I should say, to me. So in terms of one of the ones that stuck out was record versus teams above 500. Did you see this list or no?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so I was gonna have you try to guess the top five here, but in terms of the top five, you have the Yankees number one, and then the Mets second with a 20-12 record, +8 run differential, and I mean the Rockies, so they just played, are 5-42. Those freaking poor bastards. I started to feel bad at points just watching them play, because they clearly do not even want to be on the baseball field at all. But that's what you got to do to a team that doesn't want to be out there. And good to see at least the Mets have that kind of record. There's stuff that I'd still like to see, improve against those teams, but nonetheless, it's nice to see that they at least have that. And then in terms of just some WAR numbers that dropped as well, Pete Alonso's leading all of Major League Baseball amongst first basemen in WAR, even beating out Freddie Freeman by point 0.1. So at least it's nice to see that, though. I will absolutely take that. And then Lindor leading the National League in terms of WAR, behind though Bobby Witt and Jacob Wilson, which isn't a surprise in their respective rights there. And yeah, I'm trying to see. So I mean, Tyrone Taylor's towards the top of center fielders in the NL East, which not a lot of good center fielders though in the NL East, because Dane Myers is leading the way, and then Johan Rojas, Michael Harris, which he's not been the same since that rookie year, and then Jacob Young. So not that much competition. Then Juan Soto leading the NL East amongst right fielders, which is good to see as well. Nick Castellanos is a negative WAR. Sucks for the Phillies. I do not feel bad at all. And then Tyler McGill, fourth in the NL East amongst pitchers, but I feel like they picked just one pitcher from each team here. So I don't know if McGill leads the Mets in WAR, but just thought I would point these stats out. And then games against teams currently below 500, the Mets have 34, which is the second most, tied with the Phillies in all baseball, behind the Dodgers. Record in one-run games, they're 13-10 with a +3 run differential. So a lot of interesting stats there, just to take a look at. There's more if you want to read them. Just go to TJ Stats. There's a couple charts there in terms of defensive stats. So I highly recommend you go look at that stuff if you are a nerd like us and are into that sort of thing. So in terms of the next thing that we will talk about is what Brian commented, and it will probably be the last thing before we preview the series coming up. But he asked if we saw the article about Pete Alonso getting information on pitchers from outside sources. Yes, and all he could say is that we're not surprised, right?
No, I'm not surprised whatsoever because he's looked a lot different from last year, and you could clearly see that he did some type of work in the offseason, and we just know based on what Eric Chavez's whole idea and his whole philosophy of his hitting philosophy was. I'm like, yeah, there's no way that Pete Alonso looked at Eric Chavez and said, "Bro, I need help," considering that the guy barely even helps the guys on the roster as total. But look, it's a good thing from Pete Alonso that he recognized that that he needed to make some changes to his swings, and he went out there, he got help from outside from the organization, and it's clearly benefited him because he's having an all-star year. He's going to make it to the all-star game, which he should either way. He's pretty much having an MVP caliber season, and right now he's on track if he continues this season to get paid in the offseason. So listen, good for him that like I said, good for him that he recognized that he needed outside help and that he needed to change his swing a little bit, and it's benefited him. And like I said, I'm not too surprised that he looked for outside help.
Yeah. If you guys are longtime listeners of the show, you would know how we feel about the hitting coach. And it remains still the same, so that's why we're not surprised. It sucks that they don't have these type of guys internally, but it is what it is. Either way, I'm very happy to see Pete Alonso having the success that he's having this year because of the fact that uh, you know, after last year he needs us and might earn him a big payday, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But let's talk about what's coming up. A little bit of a shorter episode, of course, today because either way, we got to keep this on the shorter end to begin with. But also, again, not a lot to unpack. But they play the Washington Nationals coming up. And unfortunately for the Mets' sake, they get a little bit of the Nationals' best, especially in game number one, where it is Mackenzie Gore versus Griffin Canning. Gore with a 3-5 record on the year, a 2.87 ERA, a 1.14 WHIP. Griffin Canning 6-2 on the year, a 2.90 ERA, a 1.32 WHIP. So a little bit of an ace off, if you will, in game number one. Mackenzie Gore, I got conflicted feelings because I have him in fantasy, but nonetheless, he's been a revelation for that Nationals team. One of the best pitchers in all of baseball with the strikeout stuff and everything. So we will see how this Mets offense that hopefully built some confidence hitting in Coors Field responds against a ace level pitcher. Game number two, Jake Irvin, who is 5-2 on the year with a 4.02 ERA, a 1.23 WHIP, versus David Peterson, who is 4-2 with a 2.80 ERA and a 1.26 WHIP. And then in game number three, Michael Soroka, who is coming back from an injury and is bouncing back a little bit. He is 3-3 on the year, 4.86 ERA, a 1.11 WHIP, and he is going against Kodai Senga, who is 6-3 on the year, 1.59 ERA, and a 1.18 WHIP. These are not the Rockies anymore. These are not the Rockies. You can tell just by the fact that they actually have ERAs that are respectable. So, it's all I could say is what we've said the entire episode. Build momentum off of what you just did against the Rockies and win these games. It's a division rival, one that you probably aren't looking at as too much of a threat for the postseason, but it would still be nice to beat them. I'm going to say that I'm going to be on the conservative side and say they take 2 out of 3. I think that they win the last 2 games. I think they're going to struggle against Mackenzie Gore. I know them going with the boring pick there, saying they're going to lose to the Nationals' best pitcher, but that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the Nationals, they are a step above the Rockies. They're a much more talented team than they have a better pitching staff in terms of starting wise. But again, with the Nationals, this is a team that the Mets should be beating. This is a team you have to take advantage of. I'll say that they'll take 2 out of 3. But even though, like I said, I think they're capable of sweeping the Nationals, but like I said, I'll stick with the 2 out of 3. I think they win the first game and the third game, and they lose the second game. But I mean, just a couple of guys to worry about. Obviously, James Wood is the Nationals' best player as of right now, and he's had a terrific year, and he's looking like he's going to make the All Star game. I mean, an 899 OPS, currently has 16 home runs on the year. CJ Abrams, that's a guy also you have to be worried about as their leadoff hitter, a guy with speed as well. So. And also, we talked about this, especially with the last series where the Mets played the Nationals, is you know really beat up. Really, you have to get to the starters early because you want to get to this bullpen as soon as possible. Because right now, the Nationals currently have the second to worst bullpen ERA in the MLB with a 5.81. The only team that's worse than them is the Athletics with a 5.99 ERA. So pretty much like we said with the offense, they have to build on this momentum out of the Colorado Rockies series. Hit home runs, take advantage with the runners in score position, knock out these starters as early as possible, and really go after that Nationals bullpen because that bullpen is just not good whatsoever.
Yeah, you gotta take advantage of that. Um, we got Ray saying also that the Nationals are pesky too, which that is very true. They are always a thorn in the Mets side, so it's going to be far from easy. But at the end of the day, you got to beat up on these teams. You got to beat up on them, especially at home, which the Mets have been good at home all year. So I expect the same to continue in terms of at least winning the series. But yeah, seeing if there's any other comments to get to. It doesn't look like it. So I think we're gonna wrap things up here. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.